Welcome to Tabletop Warden. As you guys can tell, that's actually a very special occasion or a very special podcast today because we are talking in English. The second time on our channel. And the reason for that is quite simple. We got a lot of requests from people overseas, actually from a lot of people from different countries. Like they are craving for English content, and a lot of people were asking me, could you write down a brief summary about your podcasts? Like, what were you guys talking about? Because they were very interested in our opinions. Problem here is that sometimes our talks are like 3 hours long. So writing stuff down in English, like translating it would take like a huge amount of work. So sorry on that part. Please bear with us, but we recognize the requests. And I and Yannick decided that we will actually put out some English content on our YouTube channel, especially battle reports and the occasional, I don't know, podcasts somewhere here and there. So the English content will not be as frequent as our German content. But as I said before, you can expect some. So, okay, so now that we got this little disclaimer out of the way, I would like to welcome Yannick.
Hi.
And Brad Lanpher.
Hey, guys.
Hey. And there's a reason why Brad is with us today, because we are talking about the Nightswatch. And Brad, as the GenCon champion from 2019, plays a lot of Nightswatch recently. For how many months or weeks are you playing now Nightswatch, actually?
I think I picked them up in September of 2019, and I've stuck with them since then, so close to 6 months.
Cool. Yeah, and since the Nightswatch received a big or huge amounts of changes in 1.5.1, we thought that talking about them would be quite interesting for a lot of people, because I think Nightswatch is very popular in America and actually in France, for example. And I think a lot of people are very interested in what your take is on the Nightswatch, especially in the competitive scene and what their status in that scene. So, without any further ado, I would say let's talk about two big units. Oh, before we go ahead, I would like to recommend you guys to our viewers and listeners here the Smallcouncil, which Brett is part of, which is also like a podcast where the guys are talking about the current state of the game, about the changes and their take on all that stuff. And Yannick and I will be putting down a link in our description of this video. So you guys can just click on that one and go ahead and listen to Brad and his fellow companions and their take on the Nightswatch and the changes that have been made in 1.5.1. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem here, man. Okay, so I think we should talk right now. Yeah, right. The reason also why we're, putting down that link to the Smallcouncil is because you are actually taking an in-depth look into the changes of the Nightswatch there, I think. So
Yes.
we will just, we will just give you a brief overview about the changes here in English now, so we can get straight ahead to the talk on the competitive topic. So, Brad, I would really like you to ask, for example, what's your current take on the Ranger Hunters? Because the Ranger Hunters were a very problematic unit in 1.4 and 1.5, but with 1.5.1, man, I hate this point talk. I just want to say 51, okay? I think it's a little bit fast. What's your take on the Ranger Hunters right now?
I think they're an incredibly good unit. At 8 points, they're a little bit glass cannony, but with some of the other changes that they've made to Corrin Halfhand, for example, they can really, really get across the board and throw out a lot of dice. So I know a lot of guys really like the Kranigmen and Starks. So the Ranger Hunters are kind of like Kranigmen, super Kranigmen, because I think they throw more dice, and they always hit on threes. So they don't, I think they don't mind the weakened token as much as the Kranigmen do. And they have a little bit better morale, and then the Nightswatch deck really does a lot for that unit. They're probably a little bit too glass cannony for me to bring at 40 points. They're kind of a specialty unit, but I still think they're really good. They scare me when I see them across the table, because if you don't get them pinned down and taken care of, then they can really, really, really cause you problems.
Interesting. So, are they actually part of one of your lists, or do you, I don't know, do you still feel like they're lacking something special, or they need something to get really get working in the 40-point list?
I think they're worth taking. I just
Mhm.
don't bring them right now at 40 points, because they don't fit into the style that I'm trying to play, which is mostly defensive and relying on holding on to objectives. I
Sure.
play the objective game a lot with Nightswatch, and Ranger. I don't think the Rangers really care to sit on an objective, so they want to get in there and kill. And my list isn't really designed for that, though they could fit in there. I think they go hand in hand with the Ranger trackers, because
Mhm.
they can use that vulnerable token to really, really cause some damage. And I think there's a lot of neat tricks that you can do with them to make them really effective. So I would probably have to work with them a little bit. And so with Adepticon being less than a month away, I don't really want to try to learn how to get the most out of them. I'm doing pretty well with the lists that I already know, so I'm going to stick to that. But perhaps after Adepticon, I'll get them on the table and maybe I'll master them.
Yeah.
I totally get you on that one, because I also tried them out once, like, I guess, and I quickly realized that they have a lot of potential, but they're very hard to use. So you need really, get in some couple of games to actually understand how to make them work, because they have the potential to, for example, to one-shot units. Like, they dish out so much damage. But yeah, as you said, they're quite a hard unit to use.
Also, as a Nightswatch opponent, I play Ilya regularly. I think this unit is also a unit which you can pick easily off. So if you have cavalry or other movement tricks like Starks have, Free Folk has, so you can go ahead and charge them, bind them, deal them lots of damage, and because they don't have the great defense with 5+ on the defensive save and 6+ on the moral, I think they can implode really quickly, and so that's also a way to break the Night's Watch list you are facing, I guess.
Yeah, I think if you see them across the table, that will be the weak spot in the list that you go ahead and try to break through and start to put them at their activation disadvantage. And it doesn't really take a whole lot to bring them down, fortunately. So
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's go ahead and then talk about the conscripts, who also got a big amount of changes in 51. And I tried him out once, actually two of them in one list, and I think I still not convinced. I still think that conscripts are a unit that is lacking something. I actually got charged by a unit of Swan Swords, and they exploded. Like, they stood no chance against anything that has critical blow or vicious. Like, oof.
Also, if you have a high number of attacks, I guess that's also the problem.
That's also true. Yeah. So, what's your take on the conscripts, Brett?
I think I'm with you. I'm not sold on them, and the way I kind of justify it in my head is I feel like Nightswatch does certain things, and they do certain things really well. So for me, I don't know why I would be trying to play Nightswatch like Free Folk. So
Yeah.
they are insignificant, and that's a nice little touch. If I ever made a list where I had my NCUs and I had the combat units I wanted, and I somehow had 4 points left over, maybe just as a filler. But I think more often than not, when you build the list, if you got those 4 points, it would be better to add a third NCU instead of the conscripts.
Exactly.
The best way to make them survive is to put Alicer in them for the at any cost order, but for 6 points, they're not working for me. I would rather have Ranger trackers every single time.
Totally.
So for me, that it's not that they're bad, but I can't justify them in any list that I make. I would rather have an NCU.
I think with insignificant and the opportunity to heal, I guess they can be a good way to block units, but not block units. So you block an area and you get charged. I think if you use them active, so you are charging the enemy, you get in combat first, so you can steal away disadvantage of the rerolls of the charge to your enemy, and I think that's also a way to let them survive longer. And yeah, I think that's you have to be very careful with them and how to play them and how to position them, and I think that's also a problem.
Yeah.
Totally. But yeah, I am also on the side of why would I take a unit of conscripts if I could take a big NCU? Like we have now in the Nightswatch, like very good NCUs, and sacrificing a unit of conscripts for an activation on the tactic board with, I don't know, a lot of very cool abilities. Yeah, it's like a no-brainer for me. Like I tried them out, as I said, once, and quickly also realized that they are not worth their points. Like you can do some cool shenanigans with them, but they just explode so fast. Like that 8+ morale, I think, is like their biggest weakness. Like anything that has vicious just makes them explode. Like I don't know. Still not convinced on the conscripts. But okay, I guess we can go ahead now to the next topic. That would be the NCUs, because we got a lot of cool new NCUs. I think we should talk about, for example, Donald. What's your take on Donald right now, Brett?
In a defensive list, I wouldn't say that anything is auto-include. They've done a really nice job of giving us a lot of options, but Donald Noy is so good when you're running a list that just wants to hold a point and kind of annoy your opponent and make your units really, really hard to kill. Those 3 order tokens are incredible. So you can play it one of a couple of ways. You can take your Nightswatch veterans and make them almost impossible to move, or you can take your Sworn Brothers and give them effectively the same defense as the veterans. So what I like to do is allow an opponent to charge into me, and Donald Noy's order tokens are actually immune to Winter is Coming because they're not a true order. So you can bolster your defense to take that charge, and when you push veterans effectively to a 2+ or otherwise cancel out Sundering, it's really, 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 really hard to put any kind of dent in them. And then if you have Craster and Amon, you're pretty much going to heal back any damage that they did to you. And then they're stuck fighting this fully healthy unit of veterans. Yeah. And they've spent one of their orders, or they've spent their Knight's Charge, or whatever the case may be. But not being able to expend the vulnerable token on you for that charge is so good too, because you can, if the money bags are open, you can go ahead and remove that token, and then they never got to spend it. So against anything that doesn't have a way to shut off orders, I've been playing against Targaryens, and it's just, they almost kill themselves when they charge you. They like to, they come in, they hit you. You can take your defense to 2, and then counterattack, 6-7 attacks back to them. And more often than not, they're taking more damage than they did to you.
Sure.
And I think the same would be true for something like Sworn Swords. If they charge you and they didn't play Winter is Coming, you're going to send so many counterattacks back to them. They're probably hurting themselves more than they hurt you. So I think he's fantastic.
Also, you're hitting Starks. I think Donald is the perfect counter to Starks. In my opinion, Starks rely heavily on charging the enemy, and when you can shut down the charge or shut down the damage potential of the charge with Dodder, I think he's perfect in this matchup. And yeah, I think in every matchup where you are not the aggressive player or don't be as aggressive in your list as your opponent, I think Donald is the perfect choice.
Yeah.
I also get that slight feeling that maybe Michael and the design team, I don't know, maybe actually really designed Donald with the Starks and Targaryens in mind, because the fact that you can play those orders, even if the enemy plays Winter is Coming, just is incredibly strong, incredibly powerful. Like before Donald, the enemy could just charge you, just wipe your unit, and you couldn't do anything to stop that, because Winter is Coming just blocks like your entire hand. Like you couldn't play the shield, you couldn't play the Watcher on the Wall, or It Shall Not End Until My Death, stuff like that. But now with Donald, you actually have some form of counterplay against that card. And I tried him out against Yannick in 2 games now, and he is incredibly strong in that matchup. Like, I feel like he should be like some sort of staple in lists that are fighting against Starks or Targaryens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You played also a very specific list, very control heavy for Nightswatch, I guess. Maybe we can touch on this list slightly at the end of the
Sure,
podcast.
of course. Yep. Okay, then I think we should talk about Corrin right now, which is considered to be the most powerful NCU in the Nightswatch arsenal. And the entire reason for that is his very powerful sacrifice ability. And on top of that, he received the little influence also. I personally tried out Corrin in a lot of games, especially against Lannisters, and I realized that he is very powerful. The amount of utility you get out of this NCU for 4 points is incredible. I love him. Like I would personally, I would love to put him into any list. But the drawback here is if you're fighting, like for example, Free Folk or the Starks, you just can't simply sacrifice an NCU activation, because most of the time you will be out activated by them from the start, and sacrificing an additional activation here is a huge drawback. But fighting against a list, with Lannisters or with Baratheons, I think he's a powerhouse. Like, what's opinion on Corrin, Brad?
Yeah, I'm going to completely agree with you. If you're playing against an army where you're not highly out activated and they're relying on kind of a powerhouse unit, like with Lannisters, I know a lot of guys run Gregor in a unit of Mountainsmen, and that's a 9-point unit, so they're not going to have a bunch of activations. I think when they have Corrin across the table from them, they're really hesitant to use Gregor the way they want to, because if he gets stuck out in the middle and Corrin can sacrifice himself and leave them stuck out in the middle and they can't do anything to get away, I think you're going to be able to easily kill that unit, and then they've lost any punching power that they have. It could be the same for Baratheons. If they've got like a unit of Sentinels with Brawn or something like that they're relying on to do all of their punching, you can just take that unit out of the game. Yeah, so I think he's really, really, really powerful. He's really scary, and the fact that he has to use his ability when he's off the board, there's really no counterplay to it outside of getting on an objective that shuts an NCU off. So Varys can't do anything about him. Intrigue and Subterfuge can't shut him down. So, yeah, he's really tough.
Only Olenna, I guess, when Olenna's out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, true. You're right. But as I said before, like I played a game against Lannisters with the Kingsguard, and he didn't stood a chance. Like he had a unit of Knights of Castle Rock in there, I think 2 Mountainsmen with some attachments, Pycelle, Cersei, and a third NCU. I can't remember right now, but man, shutting off the Kingsguard for an entire round, and then I had Walder also in that list to shut down his Knights of Castle Rock. I alpha charged the units of Mountain Men, just wiped them with one charge, and then it was an uphill battle from him. Like he couldn't get back into the game because his Kingsguard just was standing there in the middle of nowhere, couldn't do shit. Like, damn, it felt like even a little bit unfair. Like I was like, damn, I think that's maybe in some matchups a little bit too powerful. But at the same time, if you are sacrificing a unit on the NCU board, you really need to make a good play in that round. Like if you are just sacrificing him to delay to delay a unit without even getting the advantage on the field, you are far behind because a 4-point NCU in the Nightswatch is a heavy investment.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, cool. So now that we got Corrin out of the way, I think we should talk about like just a small talk about JR NCU, which is also one of the newest NCUs or got changed. I personally didn't test it JR right now. I think he could work, especially against Lannisters as well, because he can block enemy influences with his tactic zone influence. But yeah, did you try him out?
I actually didn't try him. Not yet. I think he's got a place. Yeah, like you said, against Lannisters. So if you claim the crown, you can only suffer 1 wound from panic tests. That would be pretty helpful against Lannisters. The money bag one, it doesn't really impress me that much.
Yeah, me too.
Blocking 1 hit,
it's okay.
It's okay, yeah. And then the letter one is definitely really good. Cannot be targeted or affected by tactics cards or NCUs. That one's going to be really, really nice. But I think there's a debate as to whether this one shuts off Winter is Coming or not, and I don't think that it does. So
No.
that's a card that really, 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 really messes with Nightswatch players, because you really need to play the shield, or you need to play Watcher on the Wall, especially to get to kind of jumpstart your plans. And he doesn't stop that. So, yeah, he's okay, but compared to Donald Noy, compared to Corrin Halfhand, and even Varys being back at 4 points, I would much rather have those guys over. So for me, the old bear, he's better, but he's still not good enough for me personally.
I think the only way where he's really good is if you are building a Death Star unit and want to protect this unit. And yeah, I think if you have a Death Star unit and Pajero on it, the most ways to cancel this unit or shutting down the unit's abilities get blocked, because Walder cannot influence them anymore. And even if you're playing against Walder, which is the most seen a way to shut down units, yes, they can block the letter field, the tactics zone, but then you can also jump on the ground and deny him half of the time. So I guess, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, Jira is like in a weird spot. I think he's really like I think he also was designed with the Lannisters in mind. Like for a specific matchup, he could be very useful, but in most cases, as Brett said, I think Corrin or Donald are just a little bit more useful on that regard.
I think
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing with Lannisters, though, is Tywin is so popular, and he can't counter Tywin. Tywin's not an actual NCU influence, so I don't think he can stop Tywin from stripping them of all of their abilities, right?
Interesting.
Yes, he can, because they are not affected by any tactic cards or NCU. By tactic cards?
Abilities or
and
influences?
NCU and abilities.
Abilities.
So
Okay,
they
so
are not affected. So I guess you only get the tokens from Tywin and don't get his other effect.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not sure. I have to reread Tywin's card, but
I think he should be able to block Tywin completely. Like the tokens are even part of his ability, so he should be able to block that as well.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't. I'm sorry. I read it as NCU influence. It is NCU abilities. So yeah, he would be able to stop the reigns of Castamere. So yeah, I think you're right. Then I think he was designed with Lannisters in mind.
Yeah. Maybe even with the upcoming Baratheons, like with all their. I mean, Melisandre, for example, is very powerful.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so I think we should now move on to the attachments. I think there are not a lot of very interesting attachments. I think the most interesting one is actually, to me personally, the Watch Captain right now, because he is the 1 point attachment in the Nightswatch arsenal that can fill that little point, cap to the 40 points. And I tested him in like, I don't know how many games, maybe 4 or 5. And I really like him. I think that he, for 1 point, is great utility. You get a lot of options if you put him down, for example, in a unit of Swarm Brothers. And I was able to perform some ridiculous combos that I wasn't able to perform before. So yeah, what's your opinion on this one, guys?
I think he's great. At 1 point, it's not just being able. Excuse me. It's not just being able to attach 2 vows to the unit, but his order is really, really nice. I did try him out, and I ran him exactly like you said in a unit of Sworn Brothers. So if you put the fire that burns against the cold on that unit, and then when you activate them, you use the order to claim the crown, you can effectively just pass out a token and continue doing that. And then with Sword in the Darkness, sometimes it's hard to control all of the zones that you want to control. So he gives you a lot of forgiveness in that area. And so 10 attacks, Sworn Brothers, and you can put out your own vulnerable token. Seems really, really, really good. So, and it is good. When I ran it, it was really, really effective. And that 8 point unit of Sworn Brothers felt like they were giving me as much as I get out of my veterans. So it's a very, very strong choice.
Yeah. Also, this unit is very customizable. So if you want a bit more defense, you can get the shield. If you want offense, you can get the swords. And what I find interesting, what I didn't expect it that way, was the shield worked pretty well with the Watch Captain together. I know we have 1 or 2 situations in the last 3 games where you where
true.
Ilya activated his order to control the bags, so he get the blocks. And because the way I had to activate my units was predictable at this point of the game, so he could shut down critical attacks on his unit and get the steam out of my attacks. So I think that changed the way the dynamic on this part of the battlefield. I think that was great, and I think with a bit of experience, I guess you can also do these defensive plays with the Watch Captain.
Yeah, I just love him for the utility. The fact that you can now, for example, put down a Hornet Wakes the Sleepers, which was one. I think it was like the most simplistic card ever. Like, throw it down, draw 2 cards, you're done. But right now with the Watch Captain, you can actually make some really cool plays. Like, put down the Horn. Next round, you can just claim the tactic zone with his order. Trade in your Horn for the fighter burns against the cold, and then when the unit activates, you can dish out a token just for free. Like, you can make some really cool plays right now with the Watch Captain. I actually had one situation where I was able to activate his order. I had the Watcher on the wall already attached to a unit of Swarm Brothers. They made a free retreat sideways, and then were able to charge another unit into the flank. Like, it was very cool. I mean, yeah, he's really great for 1 point.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I think the other attachments are, well, they're kind of okayish. We have also Alistair. We have Corrin Halfhand as an attachment. But yeah, I think you guys can hear about them on the Smallcouncil. Their take on those. And yeah, let's just
I
go
think
ahead.
they for 2 points they are good, but
They're
situational,
okayish.
because
Yeah.
2 points for an attachment is very much in the Nightswatch. I guess we will see this at the end when we build a few lists. Yeah, you have also you have very expensive units, and then putting a 2-point attachment in a unit, I think that's sometimes the problem.
Yeah, 2 points. So right now are it's also considered a heavy investment in a Nightswatch list. Yeah, that's true. Okay, I think now we are getting to the interesting part now, because we will talk about some commanders. My personal idea was here, maybe you could give us some sort of tier list. Would that be possible, Brad?
Yeah.
Like who
Yeah,
would
I can talk about the 2 that I've been running,
Sure.
and I've been having some really nice success with them.
Hmm?
So the first list, which I would consider my primary list, this is the list I'm going to use against most armies. It's Jon Snow Commander in a unit of veterans, just a regular unit of veterans with no attachment, a regular unit of Sworn Brothers with no attachment, and a unit of Ranger Trackers. And then I have Ghost, obviously, with Jon Snow. And then I'm bringing Donal Noy, Aemon, and Craster as NCUs. And so that puts me at 8 activations. And yeah, sort of like I've explained before, I try to play more reactively. Unless I have a really nice play, I pretty much let them come to me. And the way I set my army up, they generally have to charge a unit of veterans. And then if they haven't played Winter is Coming, I will use a Donal order and call counterattacks. And I'll generally stick 3-4 wounds on them. And then from there, I can use my Ranger Trackers or my Sworn Brothers to countercharge. And that's generally the premise of the list, what seems to work out. Obviously, it's more complicated than that on the table. But the other thing with Donal is he almost allows you to be a little bit reckless with your unit. So if you're holding an objective in the center, you might not mind too much being flank charged, because he can effectively cancel out that flank. So yeah, he's a little bit tricky, and I think he's still new enough that some people kind of forget that his orders are there, and they think they have a really good play, and then you pop one of his orders and they did nothing to you. So yeah, and then obviously Aemon being able to heal all the time, it just makes it really, really, really tough to get through those units. And Sworn Brothers become much more survivable, and they do most of the heavy lifting with the trackers. The veterans basically kind of grind and stay alive. And so this list is really effective in objective scenarios. It's really nice in a Dance with Dragons if you can pick up the token with Jon Snow. He's almost going to be able to hold that token for the whole game. So it works out pretty well for me. I save Ghost. I don't put him out there. I do play that really annoying combo where I'll send Ghost in just to tie like a unit of Tully Cavaliers up, or tie another really heavy hitter up, and then when they do kill him, I'll play It Shall Not End Until My Death, and then I delay them for even longer. So that's definitely in my playbook. But I actually charge the Ranger Trackers as well, and I think when I do that, it kind of catches people off guard, because they always assume that you're just going to move up and shoot them. No, I'll charge them in, and especially playing against cavalry units like Targaryens or Tully Cavaliers or Knights of Casterly Rock, because now that I've charged you, I've taken your charge ability away, so you're going to have to commit some resources to retreat, or you're just going to stand there and fight me, and your attack isn't as good as it is when you charge. So I really, really like doing that with Rangers, they've got such a long range, so I just charge them in. They're not terrible in combat.
No, they're okay, but I totally get you. I'm using that tactic as well, like a lot, especially against Knights of Castle Rock. Like the Lannister player always feels like a little bit bamboozled. Like, why would you do that? And then after that, I'm like, yeah, man, come on. I could charge you, or you could charge me. Like, who would win that engagement? Like, come on. My 6-point unit is tying up your 8-point unit. I won on that part. So I'm totally okay with that. Even if they're like dead after, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 attacks, taking out his cavalry for those actions. Totally fine with that. But yeah, your list is very defensive. I like it a lot. Actually, I played almost exact the same list. I just traded in 1 unit of Retins of the Watch for Swarm Brothers and had Varys instead of Crester. And it worked out for me as well. I think like John is still like considered to be a top tier commander for the Nightswatch, sadly, because I also feel like he's the most boring commander out there. Like he's so like if he gets his morale tests working out for him, like he becomes the most annoying commander to play against, maybe like on the same level as Tyrion. But yeah, he is very effective, especially in the Stark matchup, in the Targaryen matchup. But how about like Free Folk and Lannisters? Like if they can dish out all those panic tokens and those vicious attacks, do you feel this list could still or has a chance against those factions?
It has a chance. Against Free Folk, I might, depending on what their list look like, I might deploy my backup list, which is a control list. But we can talk about that in a moment. But I think it's going to depend. I think that with Donald, you have a good chance of bouncing off a charge from like Knights of Castle Rock. And I know a lot of people are using Mountainsmen as heavy hitters. If they don't have Gregor in the unit and they charge into you, I think they're relying on Vicious. But I know math says if they hit you 8 times, you should only block 6 or 7. But I feel like with a 2+, there's a really good chance that you block all of those hits. And then maybe those Mountainsmen kind of crush themselves charging you. So it's going to depend largely on the matchup, but I feel like Lannisters are mostly relying on panic to do the damage, and they have to get a wound through to start to take advantage of that panic. And back to John being boring, I think he is a little bit boring, but you can use some of his cards to make plays that guys don't expect. I know that I've used Ghost in a situation where I set him up to where he would need a 6 to make a charge, and I don't really want to make the charge. I want to fail, because then I take a morale test that he passes automatically, and then I can trigger Stand United Brothers and heal something. So it's an interesting way to get some use out of that deck, and I really, really like For the Watch.
So, yeah, For the Watch is a very good card, yeah.
It's a great card. So it gives you some deep strike potential, especially if you've played Watcher on the Wall and attach that, and then you play For the Watch. Now maybe your Sworn Brothers are moving 8 inches. So it's a very nice card. But I think, yeah, it depends on the matchup. It wouldn't be the best against Free Folk panic lists or against Lannister lists that are having a lot of control and a lot of panic damage. So but it can work. I've done okay against our local Lannister player with that list. It just is very frustrating for him because he's having trouble getting through the veterans, and he's struggling with what to spend his counterplots on. So when I played his Tywin weakened list, he was burning his counterplots on Fire that burns against the cold, and he burned one on Watcher on the Wall. Well, then of course I had all of my other cards once he burned his 2 counterplots. So
yeah. Also, I guess as an opponent, when I first look at this unit, I would try to pick one of the squishier units out, so Ranger Trackers or Swan Prodders. So I guess this would be the way to go for me when I had to play against this list. But yeah, I see the synergy with Donne. So yeah, that you can block these charges, block these attempts, killing this one unit. Yeah, seems tough.
Yeah, maybe double vets are actually the future for the Nightswatch. I was always hesitant to put down two of those on field. I don't know. I always felt like veterans were lacking something unique. Like in my games, most of the times the enemy player tends to ignore them, like just run around them, and I don't have a lot of options to get to the enemy except for the watcher on the wall. But
Yeah.
maybe if you're putting down two of them, just like build a straight wall out of veterans, he can't just simply ignore them. He has to get at some point through them to get those crucial engagements in on the more squishier units. Yeah, maybe that is the future for the Nightswatch. I don't know. Maybe I should try this one out as well.
Yeah, I think they can be surprisingly more offensive than you think. As we already mentioned, For the Watch is a fantastic card. If you can pull a condition token and heal a rank, and then get your 7 or 8 attacks out of them, and if you've got the unit of Ranger Trackers, and if you're playing conservatively with them, they're essentially just farming out a vulnerable token. So I think a vulnerable token is going to be better than Sundering on its own. Obviously, Sundering mixed with vulnerable is better, but they can actually do some damage with the Ranger Trackers supporting them. So I found they're especially units with a 4+ defensive save or worse, they'll be able to kill them.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think if you have something like Baratheons or Lannisters with 3+ defense saves, I guess this would be hard for veterans to crack.
Yes.
But yeah, I think then two units of Swan Prodders are better to play against high defense lists. Yeah, but I think this list should work.
Okay. Yeah, that's your first competitive list right now. Can we take a look at your second? I think you're playing Alistair as well, right?
Yes.
Okay,
So
cool.
my second competitive list. Sorry. It's my best attempt at control with Nightswatch. So, like you guys, I really like control style, and so this one would be if I saw a really defensive list, or maybe a free folk list that had giants or otherwise a swarm that I was never going to score points from. So this list has Sworn Brothers and Sworn Brothers, just naked, no attachments. And then it has Alistair, the commander, and a unit of veterans. Then it has Ranger Trackers, Walder Frey, Varys, and Craster. So I bring Varys in this list because I'm really afraid of Harma. So
Yeah.
I think when the free folk player it's his active round, I think his obvious play is going to be to claim the horse and play Fainting Maneuver, which is the card that scares me more than anything in this game. So Varys would be able to try to stop whatever zone claim they make, and then they can make their choice of the zone. But if they didn't sit on the horse, then I would just take the horse from them. So that's why Varys is in that list, is to stop that Fainting Maneuver on those rounds where they're going first. And then also Walder Frey is there because he can make units like the Free Folk Raiders worth a victory point. And I think that's really important when you're playing against those swarm lists, because they're basically denying you any victory by combat. So Varys is also there in case if they don't have Harma that I'm afraid of. He's also a counter to Ygritte. So if you put Walder Frey on a unit, then their counter is to put Ygritte on the unit to make them no longer worth a victory point. But Varys can stop Ygritte from doing that. If you
You're
need that to happen.
you're countering the counter to your counter.
Interesting, yeah.
Yep.
True.
I like it.
Yeah. So that's the plan with that. But also, Alistair's cards are so oppressive. I'm starting to think Ruthless Approach might be one of the better cards in the game. So
yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah, and especially with 3 NCUs. So I'm thinking a list like Lannister Guard with Guard Captain that I can't necessarily punch through. If I control the even the letter and the crown, so I can shut off their Guard Captain and make them -2 on their panic tests, they're going to crumble. If I control the letter and the money bag, they've lost their Guard Captain order and Lannister supremacy, and they've lost a point of armor. Yeah, it's just a really good card. It's a good way of dealing with a lot of things. And obviously, shutting down abilities is going to be amazing, but that's not even necessarily the worst thing. It depends. -2 movement is amazing. -2 attacks is really good. So there's nothing bad about that card. So it's great. And then I think he might be better served in a unit of Sworn Brothers to really take advantage of Prey on the Weak. But I put him in the Veterans because I want to keep him alive, because I want to be able to cycle seeing their flaws if I need to. And so he would have to be close in order to get the benefit from that. And I don't necessarily want my Sworn Brothers always being close to enemies because they're a lot easier to kill than the Veterans. But
Sure.
yeah, he's fantastic. And if you've stripped a unit of abilities and they charge you anyway, you've got a really good chance to trigger Pathetic Attempt. And that's just a really, really, really nasty card.
Yeah, Pathetic Attempt, also awesome. Yeah,
yes,
go ahead,
Pathetic Attempt works better when he's also in the Veterans, because Veterans don't lose rank so likely as the Swan Brothers. So
yeah,
I guess also synergy there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, yeah. And he counts as a 3 if you attack his unit. So depending on how many ranks you have left, they might take 3, 4, 5 wounds automatically.
Yeah,
it's pretty hard to come back from that.
What's your problems you face with this list? Any problems in a specific matchup?
I've mostly been practicing the primary list, so there's been very few matchups where I actually had to bring this list. Some of the problems can be with card draw. I know Craster's there to kind of help out, but you really, really need some of the cards. And then, yeah, just general problem. Varys' luck. If he's not canceling zones, then he's kind of a wasted.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's been really good for me. And one of my friends, Chapel, just took this list to a tournament, and he ended up winning the tournament running this list throughout. It's been tested by me, and then it's been tested by him, his meta. So it's proven pretty effective. It's really oppressive, and if it's hitting on all cylinders, and you're getting the cards that you need, it's really, really tough. So
for sure.
Yeah, I and Brett, we talked about the content of the podcast beforehand, and we realized that we both came up with the same list. Like, I came up with the exactly same list for Alistair, because I think right now he is a very powerful commander for the Nightswatch, because he is a pseudo control commander, especially with a Ruthless Approach, which is so much utility in one card. Like, for example, you could shut down giants with that pretty easy, not even by the ability shutdown, but by taking away their attack dice. Like, if you control the combat zone, they only have 1 dice, right? So you can take away that 1 dice and they can't even attack this entire round. It's a lot of utility, a lot of great usage, and Pathetic Attempt, for example, is a great way to kill wolves just for free if you're fighting against Starks, for example. Yeah, I love him. I think he is a powerhouse in the Nightswatch, maybe even right after John on, I don't know, in the top 3, I guess, right now. Yeah, and I hope that I can surprise a couple of people in the upcoming tournament I will be attending in Paris. hope I can surprise them and make him work. Okay, now that we talked about your both lists, I would like to talk about JR Commander right now, Brad, because I fell actually in love with JR Commander. I still think that his cards are kind of okay-ish, except for Duty to the Watch, which is a very good card. But I love his attachment. The fact that stuff on your unit just works all the time, it feels awesome. Did you play Chairs in, I don't know, the last couple of games or weeks?
I actually tried him. I just found that I know that his unit is such a powerhouse unit, and it's a really, really scary unit. We talked about on Council some of the combinations that you can pull off with that. But for me, John and Alistair were more attractive. And I would probably even say that Yarwick maybe even is a little bit better than Jor. But he is very good. I don't want to see him across the table. Especially if he's in a unit of veterans. I don't know that I can get through that. So it's one of those things. It's odd where I'm somewhat afraid of that build, but I don't run it myself. So I do think that he has a lot of value, and yeah, just in particular, it's his unit. They're probably the best unit on the table, no matter what you're playing against. So
yeah, totally. I have played him now, I think, 3 times. 2 of those were against Lannisters, worked out pretty well. Because of Duty to the Watch, they weren't able to dish out their panic damage to me. And the third game was against Baratheons, and that was just the slaughter. Like, because of unwavering conviction, they couldn't play any form of cards. Jero with swords is attacking with 10 dice all the time. Damn, that was just a slaughter. I feel like in specific matchups he couldn't be very effective, but I don't see him like in the top tier list of the commanders for the Nightswatch. I personally am playing him because I just love his model. I am a simple man. I see cool looking stuff. I'm playing it. Like, his model is just awesome. I think the commander himself, his personality is great. So I was like, let's just build a JR list and make it work. Like, at least I'm trying right now. But I also realized that if you're facing, like, for example, Free Folk, or if you're fighting Starks or Targaryens, he's struggling like a lot. His unit is incredibly strong. You can pull off some very cool combos, like stuff that Nightswatch wasn't able to do before, especially now with the Horn that is all as active all the time. But yeah, I think Jer is still like in the maybe he's in the middle field right now, right after Ortler, as you said. Yeah. But what would you say? What should the designers maybe change about this commander to make him like equal to John and Alistair? Like, what would it take?
I think they did amazing with his on-field presence, and I think that anybody who's running him is probably running him for that field presence. I know that they don't want to rework tactics cards, but for me, they're too underwhelming for me to really justify bringing him. I think his on-field commander is great, like I've already said, but it's just so hard to look at his cards and then compare them to Othel's cards or Alice cards, John's cards, and I just don't. I'm not drawn to his cards, and I know that there have been a couple of people. I know that Michael Chanel discussed it and tried to put a bright side on some of his cards, but I just don't. I don't see him as being better than those other commanders. His cards are just a little too weak for me. I think his attachment is great. I don't know that you can really do too much more on his attachment without him being just crazy overpowered. But I don't know. Unless it was a way to cycle his commander cards like they did with Jaime Lannister, who has weak commander cards. At least they made him able to come back over and over again. I guess if you were able to cycle his cards, then he might, but he might be too strong at that point. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I'm not great at designing. I just know that his field presence is spectacular. His cards are just too underwhelming for me.
I think that, like you said at the beginning, that JR just fits in specific matchups, and I think that's a niche that he should fill. And so, yeah, like you said, against Lannisters, against neutrals, anything that plays around Panic, I think he's great. And I don't think that his cards are as awful as most people think. But yeah, there are stronger cards out there, but I see them having an effect on the right situation. So I think I'm fine with the cards. So yeah, not as powerful as other cards from other commanders, but I think he compensates that with his field presence. And yeah,
My
think
biggest
it's fine.
problem, I think my biggest problem actually with Jer is I love his attachment, as I said before. I think Duty to the Watch is an awesome card in specific matchups, like against Lannisters. It's very powerful card. But my biggest problem with him is actually unwavering conviction, because I think this card, the drawback here is just way too big. Because yeah, you're attacking like you're at the full strength, which is awesome for Sworn Brothers, for example. And the enemy can't play any tactic cards, which is also very powerful if you're fighting, for example, Baratheons, as I said before. But at the same time, after that, you have to discard 2 vows. Like, you want to have 2 vows on this Jer powerhouse unit. And then discarding both of them, it just feels like a little bit too much. Like, you are burning through your cards with him very fast, and you're dishing out those vows on his unit, then you're discarding them again, then you're placing them down again. Yeah, I think Brad is actually a little bit right here. Maybe he should get something that allows him to cycle through cards. Maybe not even his specific commander cards, but maybe, I don't know, getting a vow back from the discard pile, like his original attachment was able to do. Maybe they should have left that ability in there to make him even a more, stronger commander. Because I don't think that recycling his cards would make him overpowered, because those cards aren't that powerful. They're okayish. And getting back, for example, I don't know, a Night Gathers, something like that, or maybe getting back a vow like the shield from the discard pile. Oof, do know. I think they are pushing him into the right direction, like in this niche to fight against panic-based lists. But he's still lacking that little something that will bump him up into the tier list, like on the top. Yeah, but I will still keep playing him, because as I said before, I think his model is just awesome, and I love this little feeling of having a unique Nightswatch Kingsguard on the field. Like, it's very cool. And yeah, okay, that was Jer Commander. I hope our Nightswatch listeners are trying him out, giving him a chance, because I think he is a cool commander to play. You can, as I said before, you can pull off some really cool combos with him. But if you're running him in a tournament, maybe you're taking a risk. I'm actually doing that right now, but I don't care. I want to surprise people. Maybe I can catch people off guard with those combos and make some very cool plays. Okay, I think we talked about the 3 commanders I wanted to talk about. Then let's move ahead and talk about the current state of the Nightswatch and the competitive scene. Brett, how many tournaments did you actually play with the Nightswatch right now?
So I did both of the Adepticon primers with Nightswatch, and I won both of them. And then I won a regular local tournament with Nightswatch as well. So technically I've played 3. The local tournaments in Indy tend to be a little bit bigger than
what's considered a local event at a lot of places. The smallest one that we had was 18 players, I think, and then the other one had 24 or so. So they're a pretty good sample size for tournaments. But yeah, I've played those 3, and then I was able to win all of them. I haven't had the chance to play in a tournament with the 1.5.1 updates, but just practicing against some of the guys that have been in those tournaments, and like I've said, we have some really strong players in our meta, so I've been doing pretty well against them. So I think the list that I'm running should be okay. But my first real opportunity to play them in a super competitive atmosphere is going to be at Adepticon. So maybe we'll have to come back and talk about how Adepticon went, and I'll have a much better feel for it. But
Sure.
We've got a lot of variety in Indy. Every house is played, and they're usually played really, really well. Our store owner Shane did win, I think 1 or 2 of the expert events at Adepticon. So he's a very solid player, and he owns every house. So he's willing to build whatever list I think I need to test. So he gives me really, really good games with really, really tough lists. So
That's commitment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Nice. Glad to hear that actually Nightswatch is making some really cool, games and as winning. But what is your personal take like on the current state on the Nightswatch? Do you think they're now in a good spot, or are they still like behind, like for example the Starks, the Lannisters, who got a lot of changes in 1.5 and are now considered to be very strong and very powerful factions?
I think Nightswatch are in a pretty good spot. I still put them below Free Folk and Lannisters, and it's close with how they compare to Starks, I think. I think the change to Great Axes did hurt a lot of Stark builds a little bit.
For sure.
But I think they're still really good. But yeah, that Great Axes were they were a nightmare before, and now they can be weakened, and the no armor save portion of Executioner's Fury just loses so much of its power when they're hitting on 3s now. So
amen to that.
Yeah, it hurt them quite a bit. But that said, I still think Starks are really competitive. I think Roderick was always their best commander, and they just kind of made him so much easier to use. Yeah, I think Roderick is amazing. I think Yannick would agree with me.
Yeah, at the current state, since 1.5, I think Roderick is the best commander.
Yeah, I'm agreeing as well.
Or at least the best commander to play against Nightswatch.
Yeah,
totally.
Because he can cancel with Winter's Coming and not Combat Prowess.
Press that. Oh, well, I'm not sure. You're right.
Yeah, one of his cards is similar to Winter's Coming and can shut down all the reactive abilities from Nightswatch. So yeah, I think he's very fine, and he has great tools to counter them. So yeah.
Yeah,
Should also be able to be a powerhouse against Baratheons, right? I mean, like having 4 Winter's Comings in your deck, like should shut out that entire faction. Like if they're not playing Courtney Penrose with that counterplot, which is also very nasty, man. Man, that commander, Jesus. But yeah, Nightswatch right now. Go ahead, Brett.
Oh, I was just going to add that Roderick is effective against Targaryens too. I think they depend on that swift retreat card a lot more than what you would think. So
true. You're right. Okay, so Nightswatch is considered to be in a good spot. But I still hear a lot of complaints from people, especially in like let's say they're not very competitive players. Like the casual player, he tends to struggle with list building right now because everything in Nightswatch seems to be so expensive, and most of the time you end up with like 4 combat units and 3 NCUs or 2 NCUs if you're putting down some attachments. Like, what is your take on that one?
I think they're going to have to maybe approach it a little bit differently. I don't think 6 activation Nightswatch. I don't think it's going to work. It might win a game or two here and there, but I think overall on the competitive scene, it's going to be really, really hard to win like that. I think with Lannisters, I won with 6, but that's because they have ways to kill things remotely where Nightswatch really doesn't. I was able to paid mutiny, dire wolves, and with Tyrion, you're able to kind of take that one powerhouse unit and clean up 1 or 2 units all in one round. Nightswatch doesn't really have a way to do that. So I think even relying on Jon Snow attachment to get Ghost as an activation can be a little bit of a mistake. Ghost really shines in the Jon Snow list for the play that I mentioned earlier, where you can keep him alive. So he's just really easy to kill, just like any dire wolf. And anytime you put him in combat, now you can't even rely on him to get wounds and force panic tests. So his role has definitely shifted to kind of a dummy activation or just an interceptor. And that's about the most you're going to get out of Ghost at this point. So I think they should. I think guys playing the Night's Watch should consider staying away from the attachment trap. I know that they have some neat attachments, but Jon Snow's attachment is 3 points. Like you guys mentioned, Alistair and Corrin are 2 points. I think a lot of their strength, they can stand alone as a unit, but you need to bolster their numbers over, trying to build these powerhouse units. If you've got 6 activations and one of them is Dario and Sworn Brothers, it's a really, really scary unit. And I choose to pick on that unit because I see a lot of people, talking about how powerful it is. But if you've only got 6 or 7 activations, a good, smart opponent in a competitive environment isn't going to let you get the most out of that unit. So
Exactly.
Yeah, I think from other factions you have lists with higher activations. So, for example, Stars can easily bring 8 to 10 activations. Free Folk is the same. Night's Watch, also Lannisters are struggling a bit to do this. But as long as you don't feed an NCU commander, you have to get your activations on another way. And I think attachments are probably you can play them, but I think with authorized commander, so you have the leftover points because you don't need to pay for an NCU.
Yeah. I feel also like building lists with Night's Watch is right now. I mean, like it's a flaw in the design of the entire faction at this point because everything is so expensive, and the initial design was that you have those like powerhouse units on the table, and they should just wreck stuff. Problem here is just if you have only like 3 of them out there and like I don't know maybe 2 NCUs and a wolf, you're getting out activated so heavily, and with Walder out there, stuff that you have built and put on the table can be shut down quite easily. So this entire thematic aspect of an elite faction doesn't work out as well as the designers intended it to be. Putting down 2-point attachments in a unit of Swarm Brothers will bring them up to 9 points, which is just a huge investment. Or, for example, Gren in Veterans is a 10-point unit, which is sure it's a powerhouse unit, but then you're lacking an activation for sure. Like those 2 points, you need them. You really need them. Hence the reason why our list actually, for example, the Alistair list that you have introduced here has no attachments besides Alistair as a commander. Like, there's a good reason for that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Night's Watch is heavily reliant on the core abilities of their basic units. The attachments right now, I think they are way too pricey. They have cool abilities. They are very strong, but in the current meta, they don't work out as well as they should. Would you agree on that one, or do you have another opinion about this one?
No, I agree. And honestly, I think the biggest hindrance to Nightswatch right now is how powerful Panic is. So
Yeah, true.
those elite units, yeah, they can take a punch and they can survive, but a lot of times they're crumbling because of Panic. And it's usually what I'm finding is when I fail a Panic test with my veterans, it's usually by 1, maybe 2, and then I'm taking 4 wounds because my D3 hates me. So I think that's probably their biggest issue. What makes them suffer is they don't. I mean, you have Alistair that gives vicious, and then you have Yarwick's cards that give vicious, but they don't have great ways of attacking with Panic.
Yeah.
And then they are very susceptible to Panic damage because they are so strong and so elite, and they have ways to block hits and they have ways to bolster their defense. But at the end of the day, they can still fail a Panic test and lose a whole rank. So it makes it really tough. And I think probably you would find that a lot of Nightswatch players are struggling because of that, because their guys are panicking off the table.
That's true. Yeah, as I said before, for example, if you're lacking those attachments, you could fill up those activations with conscripts, but I don't see conscripts still working. So list building with Nightswatch right now feels a little bit restrictive, I would say. For example, what's your take, for example, on the Scorpion? Like, did you even use it like in the last couple of months? Because I am not using it at all anymore.
No, I haven't used it, not competitively. I've thought about how cool it might be. I think the 1-point Scorpion modification is pretty nice, but at the same time, unless you're running Commander Yarwick, you have to bring Spotter Yarwick, which puts it at effectively 9 points to put a Scorpion on the table.
True.
They are powerful and they can be pretty scary, but for the most part, I think even still they're outdone by crossbows.
Yeah, that's
for
my take as
their
well.
for their ability to kind of move around and just having and being able to retreat and things of this nature. I know it doesn't thematically make sense for the Scorpion to be able to retreat, but the fact that it can't is a huge hindrance for me. If my crossbows get charged, at least, if I have Watcher on the wall on them, they can make a free retreat and then shoot you. The Scorpion, on the other hand, is just screwed. So
Yeah.
it's pretty tough to bring it competitively, I think.
Yeah, I think also that Nightswatch, because especially of those war machines, is a little bit restricted in the options they have to put down on the table. Like, I mean, let's talk straight here. Like the Stone Thrower is garbage. Like, it's a horrible unit in a lot of aspects. Like, it feels like gambling, playing the Stone Thrower. Either you are rolling very high and very good and destroying the enemy without any form of counterplay, or you are rolling very bad and you wasted like 10 points, which is just huge, 25% of your entire list. And since Waller has been released, I mean, there's no good reason playing War Machines because, yeah, you can't expect Waller to be in every list, but let's be honest, he is in a lot of lists. He will be in a lot of lists, and especially in the competitive scene. And he can just shut down War Machines and make them useless in every regard. Yeah, so what's your take, for example, on the Stone Thrower right now? What's your opinion on that one?
I'm pretty much of the same opinion as you are. It's either fun for you because you're rolling really well, and then it's horrible for your opponent, or it's great for your opponent because you roll badly, and then it's terrible for you. So I view it as kind of it's bad experience one way or the other. Somebody's going to be happy, and someone's going to be mad, and I don't particularly like it. But yeah, with as you mentioned, with Walder, and I think nearly every competitive Lannister list has Tywin. It's going to be shut down, and I don't think there's a whole lot you can do. If you run a Stone Thrower and you're thinking about doing it competitively, I think you have to at least run Varus to counter Walder. But then you're completely relying on dice with it. It's 1/4 of your army. It's really hard to keep it protected for a long period of time. And I just don't see it as a great competitive thing. I don't necessarily want to see it across the table, but I wouldn't field one.
Yeah. I actually want to see one field it across the table, because then I will bring my Alistair list with Walder, and I'm fine. Like,
correct. Yes, that's exactly what I would do. The exact same thing. If I saw a Nightswatch list that had one, I would just err to the side of caution and bring Alistair, and then he would probably have a really bad game, and he would be mad. But that's part of it, I guess. So
yeah.
That's also something what people often forgets. If you're playing on a competitive level, try to get tilt proof, don't get mad at some bad dice, and you will start winning more games. So it's just general advice, I guess.
Yeah.
yes, there's.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
No, I would just to add, like, try to stay cool in such a game, because sometimes you feel salty about specific dice rolls, but at the end of the day, like, it's a dice game. Shit happens. I mean, it happens for your opponent maybe as well. Maybe even in the same game. Like, I had a game where I failed like 3 charges in a row, always rolling that stupid one, which I hate at this point. But it's ruining us so much place for me. But I mean, it happens. And then on the other side, I managed to, like, for example, dish out only 3 hits from that failed charge. But then my enemy failed a panic check and got like 4 wounds. And then I feel like, I got bad luck, but he also did. But then it's okay. Just so try to stay cool. It's all gonna, pan out in the end for you if you're playing everything right.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Brett. Now you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say you definitely have to stay cool even when things go badly, because I think when a player gets heated and gets angry and they start to feel desperate, they make really, really bad plays. I think an angry player is not the best player. They're definitely not at their best. And if your opponent sees that you're frustrated and tilted, they can definitely take advantage of that. There is a psychology aspect to the game.
Okay.
Back to Nightswatch, I guess.
yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about what else we could discuss here on this podcast right now. For me, one of the biggest topics was actually really like the competitive lists, what people are playing right now, and how the Nightswatch is competing in the current tournament scene. I still feel like Nightswatch. I think they're in a good spot right now after the changes, but I still think that they will struggle in the future against the other factions, especially against high activation factions like Starks and the Free Folk. I also played a couple of games against Targaryens, and I also realized here that Targaryens are a very strong faction against the Nightswatch. I faced a list with 2 Screamers and 3 Outriders, and it wasn't funny because I just couldn't reach those guys. They were just circling around me, shooting into my flank, and I was so heavily dependent on my Watcher on the wall, and I needed to draw that one because without that card, you are pretty much screwed. But maybe, I don't know, if you're playing like 3 Ranger Trackers, you could stand a chance against that faction. But at the same time, that's like 18 points invested into Cav. That is not doing that much damage. Like, Targaryens will still out damage you on that part, especially with Screamers then in their entire, like a combination of cards and stuff like that. I think Nightswatch is still lacking a couple of options, especially in the 5 to 6 points range. I would really love to see an infantry unit for 6 or 5 points that is not as squishy as the conscripts. And I'm looking forward to the Heroes box too, because I think if the Nightswatch gets their hands on a second NCU for 3 points, I think they can become a very strong faction, because then you don't have to invest so much into your NCUs, and you could actually bring a couple of Death Stars to the table that will work out for you in the end. It all depends right now, actually, what, for example, Cold Hand will bring to the table, because he seems to be a solo model. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is considered to be one, right? So I'm looking forward to him, like what his abilities are, because having a free, maybe he will be like a 4-point unit that will bring some very cool abilities to the table. And I'm also looking forward to Benjamin Stark, because I think right now the greatest weakness of the Nightswatch is their mobility. If Nightswatch get hands on some cards that allow them to perform more maneuvers, give them more speed, or getting an attachment, for example, Benjamin Stark as a commander that gives them more speed or allows them to reroll charges, which I would love to have at this point, because as I said, I'm screwing them up every single time, especially when I'm playing like Swarm Brothers with John, 10-point unit that is just wasting the charges all the time. It's annoying. But yeah, I think I'm very looking forward to Benjamin Stark. I really want to play a Nightswatch army that is very mobile. I think Alpha Strikes from the new Swarm Brothers can be a game changer if you're able to perform those over a longer distance and make those charges safer. I think Nightswatch will be in a very, very good spot and will compete, for example, with Starks in that regard, because Starks can charge you if you charge them, right? I mean that's how it works.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess something like that. But yeah, what's your take actually on the Heroes box too, Brad? What are you looking for? What are you hoping to see in that box?
Yeah, I'm pretty in agreement with you, actually. I would like to see some mobility, and I'm really hoping for a 3-point NCU. And if Cold Hands is a solo model, I think it would be really, really, really helpful. So, yeah, I'm pretty much right on the same page with you. You rely on Watcher on the Wall so much, and it can only get you so far, and you only have 2 of them. It is a game-changing card, but it's basically all Nightswatch has to alpha strike anything. So it would be nice to have something from a new commander that added some mobility.
Also, if I'm right, Michael said in one of his podcasts that there will be some ways to boost your mobility, and maybe
Oh, true. Yeah, you're right.
maybe there will be some more besides
Yeah.
the Crow and Half Hunter NCU.
True. You're right. Actually, I really hope that he's talking about Benjamin here, or maybe even a attachment just for 1 point, like a neutral attachment. I don't know. I just would love to see the Nightswatch getting that mobility aspect going for them, because right now they have everything else covered. Like you have a commander for the offense, you have a commander for defense. You could consider Alistair like control, I guess, or maybe the panic one. Jair is the morale one. Am I forgetting someone? John is actually the healing one. Yeah, right. He's the healing one. So actually, only mobility is missing right now. So I hope that Benjamin is like, man, I would love to see like something like Swift Advance. Just imagine Swarm Brothers with Swift Advance, man.
Yeah, but I think mobility is also the way to counter Nightswatch, and I think that's a specific thing that most factions can't do. And I think at the mobility aspect, Nightswatch are at the middle of the field with Starks and Targaryens on top, and the rest equal or not as good as them. So I think they're fine on this side. I think Nightswatch can do everything, but not everything great. So
true.
I think that's also a way Nightswatch shine, because you have tools for everything, offense, defense, mobility, some kind with the Watcher, and yeah, you have the toolbox with the wows, so yeah, you're flexible to your to how you will want to play the game, how you want to play against your opponent. So I think Nightswatch have ways to deal with nearly every opponent.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, their entire design philosophy was to make a toolbox army, like a army that can adapt to every situation. You could play them like offensively, you can play them defensively. And
Yep.
yeah, you're right. You can play them like mobility heavy with trackers and ranger hunters right now. But well, they're lacking just the commander in that regard. That's the only thing that they're lacking right now. A commander that's even pushing that mobility aspect even further up to 11. Like for example, Otel is pushing up that offensive aspect. And I would really love to see what Michael is coming up with and the design team at Simon for the Nightswatch, because I think mobility with an alpha strike, as I said before, with the Swarm Brothers can be devastating. Like it can be really devastating. 8 dice, critical blow, sundering on a 3+. They really need to balance out those cards pretty well so that they aren't too powerful, but at the same time maintain that mobility aspect going for them. So I hope to see something. Maybe Swift Advance is truly too strong on something like on Swarm Brothers, but maybe something like, I don't know. I always considered Harma's cards to be like I don't know, Ranger themed. Like those cards are fitting the Ranger theme for Benj and Stark quite well, but at the same time, you just can't copy past those. So I'm very interested in those.
On the mobility aspect, if you are looking into commanders, you have how it's called Darion Aharis as a commander, so you can get forced march, so you can cover a bit of the mobility over this card.
Yeah,
You get weakened. That's a bit problematic when you want to charge, because your rerolled dice can get rerolled again, but also you're one of the only armies that can prevent a token from being expended. So with fire that burns against the cold, I think, yeah, if you really want mobility that badly, you can go this way at the moment.
At the moment, right now, that's right. Yeah, I also played Dario in 1.5. I just give him a lot of tries. I think he has a great potential in the Nightswatch because of Forced March. You are allowed to perform some very cool alpha strikes. Yeah, like you said, your unit becomes weakened, but then you have your fire that burns against the cold to mitigate that again, to cancel that token. And alpha strikes with Swarm Brothers and reckless strikes, for example, on top of that, it's just devastating. But yeah, he's a neutral commander. His other cards are okayish. They can be very good in specific matchups, like for example, playing against the neutrals. Like you can cancel tokens when they get placed down on your units and stuff like that. But yeah, I think just Nightswatch right now, they are a faction that is fun to play. I just love them. I will not give up on them anytime soon. I will drop them as soon as Greyjoys drop. But yeah, that's the only time that will happen, because I still love this faction. I think it's very fun to play. Has a lot of potential. And maybe we are judging them way too early. Maybe they are actually top tier, because we should give stuff more time to, people test things out and stuff like that. And they're a very cool faction. Like if you're considering playing Nightswatch, go ahead. It's a very cool one. You get great models. They have a lot of cool options now, and yeah. Brett, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think they're a really good and solid faction. It takes there's a little bit of growing pain to them. You have to kind of learn how to play them, and when you bring Ranger trackers for the first time, they'll probably get exploded. So you have to give them a chance. I think they're one of the better units in the game when they're used properly. Maybe the best support/specialist unit that there is. So just give it a little bit of time and give it some practice. But they're definitely really fun. I never planned to play them, but I wanted to try. I wanted to try Othel out. Nobody was running him at the time, so I tried with him, and then I was like, "This is really actually really fun. It's a different kind of play style, and I think it's healthy to try different things out, and it helps make you a better gamer. So they're definitely fun, and they do have some of the models. I think I don't think you should sell them short. Just try them out and see if you can come up with anything on your own that you think is cool. Maybe it'll be the next best thing.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, guys. I think we should wrap it up at this point. We talked now quite a long time, I think, about the Nightswatch. I hope our listeners are liking the format that we're putting out right now and in English. As I said in the beginning of the podcast, expect some more English content on our channel. It's not going to be as frequent as the German one, but it will happen. We are not forgetting about you. We know that a lot of people from America, from England, and even from Asia are watching our content, because right now on YouTube, there are a couple of channels that are putting out, for example, content for this game, but they're not as huge in numbers as, for example, the big players like the EV games, like Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40k, and stuff like that. So we want to toss our gloves into the ring here and provide some content for this game, because we just love it. I think it's one of the best games I actually played. The system is awesome. The designers are really trying their hardest to make this game work in every regard. They're not giving up on units. Like, for example, Varys was a disaster on release. Like, he got changed 2 times now, and I think now he's in a very, very great spot. Yeah, you can feel the love for this game, like from the designers and from the community. Yeah. Okay.
And
Go ahead.
also, before we finish, if you want to listen to other great content, check out Smallcouncil. It's the podcast that Brett do, like we said at the beginning. Yeah, it's great. I think they cover the stuff also in a good way, have a little bit other perspectives on the changes. So, yeah, check them out.
Awesome. Okay, if you guys don't have anything to add anymore, I think we are then at the end of this podcast. And I would like to thank Brad again for coming to us and providing his insight on the Nightswatch.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's always an honor to talk with you guys. And hopefully,
pleasure for us.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we get to talk after Adepticon. We'll see how it goes for me. I'm in 4 different events, but I'm actually
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 of them, I don't have any control over the armies that I play in the Generals tournament, and I'm actually taking Free Folk to the team tournament. So that should make that should make Michal happy.
You are a betrayer, man. How can you go beyond the wall? Don't do this to us.
Traitor.
Traitor.
Yeah.
Stab him. What?
He loves Jon Snow, so I guess
Maybe.
there are some similarities.
I still think they will bring out Jon Snow as a free folk commander. I think that will happen at some point, so you're fine.
Yeah. Well, it should be fun. But
Yeah.
I'm going to be gathering a bunch of data at Adepticon.
Cool.
I'm close with Marty, the tournament organizer, so I'll have access to every single. So we'll definitely have a lot to talk about. I'm curious to see how it goes there.
I'm looking forward to that one, man. I really want to know how the Nightswatch performed there in the tournaments and the events. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. I would say thanks for listening, everyone. And see you around. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.